Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are answering your questions. Yes, you guys have been sending me lots of questions about what it's like living overseas as an American. We are a family of 6 who live in New Zealand and have been for 4 years. And so I am going to answer some of your dying questions. Now, there's a lot of questions that I've gotten, but I've tried to put them all together. Like if there's multiple of the same question, we are definitely answering that today. But I'm going to go through a total of 5 questions that you guys have and that I could probably talk forever about, but I will try to summarize my thoughts and give you some good tips about what it's like living overseas. Let's just sit down and have a chat about what it's like living overseas. So the first question is around interviewing and how to get a job. And there's lots and lots of questions about that. So I'm going to highlight some of the very key things that you probably wouldn't know unless you lived here. Now, New Zealand being a very small country, it's actually very, very important who you know. I've seen people get jobs just because of somebody that they knew. So as a immigrant or a foreigner, that makes things difficult, right, to get a job. So if you can get a job on a work visa and come over here and work, that's good. And then as you get to know people, it will be easier for you to get a job. Okay, so it is very important about who you know here, unfortunately. Okay. The other thing is I've noticed, and this isn't true across industry, like my husband is in IT and he's had no problem getting a job. It just depends. So he's had no problem getting a job because he has skills that they don't teach here. So if you have a skill that they don't really learn here, then you're good to go. But if you have a very common skill, then it's going to be much harder because they generally like to hire people that have worked in New Zealand in the past or are familiar with the New Zealand culture because they get so many people from different countries and they just prefer that you have some New Zealand work experience. So for me, I'm in education. I teach at the tertiary level or the university level. And I had a lot of trouble because even though I worked 20 years, I would go into a job interview and they would say, you know, I'm definitely perfect for this job. And they would even show me my office. I'm walking away feeling like I definitely got this job. And then I get a call a week later saying, we gave it to a different guy because he had New Zealand teaching experience. And I was like, okay. So that was really frustrating to me because I felt that coming from another country, having a worldwide experience as we live in a worldwide marketplace, that would be better than someone that just has a limited experience here, but not so much. I did end up getting a job probably because I knew another American and she was also from Wisconsin. And so that helps. So it kind of is who you know, unfortunately. So it just depends. So go on to the immigration site and look at their skill shortage. Those you can definitely get a job. And then there's, you know, another shortage where they're just looking for certain types of skills. And those, I think, teachers, construction workers, but, you know, it's always changing. So don't quote me on that. So just go on. Their immigration site is really easy and really helpful to work with. And we did everything from there. We didn't hire anybody to help us move here. We just followed the directions on the immigration site and everything worked out. So that's another thing that you need to know. So it's people, it's who you know. It's also, you know, you have to have experience working here. And even your degrees, like the fact that they're not familiar with the universities that I went to, wasn't great to them. You know, I even had a friend of mine who had to go back and get another master's of business here because the MBA that she got in the States wasn't good enough, which is weird. But anyway, so those are just some tips and things to think about depending on what your job is. The other thought that I had is that they have what's called a tall poppy syndrome in this country. And what that means is you can't speak too highly of yourself. They don't like it. They want to cut down all the poppies to be the right size. So being humble is valued here way more than like what you would expect in the States, right? So in the States, it's very normal to just be very clear about what you're good at, really kind of sell yourself. When you go to a party, you go to an event, people just talk about what they do for a living and that sort of thing. People don't do that here. You don't talk about how great you are. You don't talk about, you know, what job you have, you know. I had friends for years and years. I had no idea they were surgeons. I had no idea they were lawyers because that's just not what people talk about. And I never even thought about the fact that I don't know. And so, yeah, so that's the tall poppy syndrome. So when you come into an interview, don't be aggressive. They don't like aggressiveness. And don't come across like you think you're all that, because that is not going to go over well. In fact, my husband's interview for the first job that he had got here was, they said, we don't want you to have that aggressiveness. And so, and that's like a stereotype of Americans, but that's not true for everybody, but they just, want it to be clear. So you don't want to come across too aggressive, too straightforward, and you don't, want to talk too highly of yourself. So those are my tips about interviewing. How hard was it to adjust to the different things, like driving on the left side of the road? What were some of the living expenses, the different foods? And for me, it wasn't hard. I was most nervous about learning to drive on the left side of the road. And in New Zealand, they use roundabouts everywhere. They don't really have four-way stops. So it really makes it easy because you just kind of keep going with traffic. And I felt that really helped me learn to drive on the left side a lot quicker. And then expenses, it is very expensive to live here because it's an island. So like everything's imported. So the price is a lot different. Now, with that being said, I'll have to do a whole nother video on how expensive I think it is to live in New Zealand compared to the US, because there's a lot higher costs on certain things in the US and a lot higher costs in New Zealand on certain things. But at the end of the day, I think it evens out. But you cannot get everything you want like you're used to having in the US here, okay? Because everything is expensive. And so even things that you can't believe it's that expensive, it is. Like I just went to have breakfast and you're paying $18 for a couple of pancakes. So, it's sometimes a little bit hard to wrap your head around. So in New Zealand, what you have to do is you can't have everything, but you just pick what you want is important to you. And so what's really nice is it reduces consumerism. It reduces all that you're buying all the time because you can't. No matter really how much money you make, I just don't think you can buy everything that you want like you can in the States. You can typically get like a Walmart version of everything, or you can go to IHOP for a $2.99 breakfast, right? So they just don't have all of those kind of options. And then the different food. Yes. Okay. So here's my tip for Americans. What I did is, because we moved to a different country and I had 4 kids, I didn't want to just like introduce them to a tons of new food. So I started making like food that we all liked as a family, tacos, lasagna, like different things that were very common for us in the States. But what I found was not a good idea, because to make those things here was a lot more expensive than it would have been in the States. And so you really kind of have to adapt to what's in season here, what people eat here, because those will be the cheapest things to buy at the supermarket. So when you're trying to feed a large family, I got to be like, oh, I can't just buy all these ingredients because I just value different ingredients differently here. And so you just kind of have to adjust. So get yourself an Edmonds cookbook, and that is kind of the famous cookbook that you can learn how to cook in New Zealand. And all of the flour and sugar and everything is grown on different soil, and so it tastes different, and what you need in a recipe is different. So don't bring your American recipes, just use the recipes here. It's not that I don't use some of my grandmother's recipes, but once you learn the difference, you can adjust. My third question, someone wanted to know all of my likes and my dislikes about New Zealand. And while I could go on probably for a good hour about all of the things that I like here, I think I'll just talk to you about the 2 things that I don't like about New Zealand. There's only 2. Number 1, earthquakes. They have earthquakes here. In fact, Wellington is on a fault line. We have earthquakes. Of course, I don't like it, but depending on where you live, everybody has a natural disaster, right? The second thing I don't like is their speeding tickets. It's so annoying because they just have cameras everywhere, and you just get like this huge bill in the mail. They don't pull you over here. I mean, you do sometimes, but in general, you don't. You just get a bill in the mail. So there's no option to like argue or to say like, this is why I was speeding. And because you'll get speeding tickets for any amount over the speed limit. So like in the States, it's very common to go 5 to 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. Here, it's kilometers per hour, but you can't, if I've gotten speeding tickets for going 3 kilometers over which is like nothing, and they're charging me $120 for that. And so what I'm saying is, in New Zealand, the speed limit is the limit. They don't want you to go over that. So just know that coming in, it's an adjustment and you'll end up getting a lot of tickets, and that's annoying. But anyway, those are my tips about that. So those are the two things that I dislike. I like so many things here. I love the work-life balance. I love the value system of the people in this country. I love the beautiful outdoors. I love how, I think work life is easy. I like how they do education here. My kids don't have tons and tons of homework all the time, and they're very reasonable. You get a sense of reasonableness when you're dealing with people here in terms of willingness to adjust to what it is that you need, because there just isn't a lot of people. So like if you're late for work or you're late for school, it's okay. I love the safety. I love that my kids can walk around. They can take public transportation. They can kind of be on their own. And just that frees me up completely to do so many things I wouldn't be able to do in the States with this many kids. So yeah, I could go on and on about what I love about this country. Fourth thing is, have I ever been discriminated against as an American? That's a good question, because I've been here for 4 years and things have evolved. And so you always get that question, do you like Trump? Did you vote for Trump? What's going on in your country? How did you guys even elect him? And then now, especially with how the U.S. has handled COVID and how, we got the whole Black Lives Matter movement and the police brutality and all the stuff that's going on, and we actually look crazy, okay? And so you're getting a lot. So now I wouldn't say I'm discriminated against. I think there's just a lot of assumptions about you. It's funny because Canadians didn't want to be termed American. So when I came into like a restaurant and they wanted to ask me if I was American, they would ask me if I was Canadian, because Canadians get offended when you ask them if they're American. So that was interesting. I was suddenly Canadian, which, as an American, we don't really acknowledge that they exist. So that was weird. And so, so do I feel discriminated against? No, but there's definitely assumptions about Americans being aggressive and loud and a little bit crazy, okay? Maybe a little bit gun crazy, and so there's a little bit of that. And then just with how the world is right now, there's definitely a little bit more. But overall, it's not too bad. And most people love Americans here, the energy, the enthusiasm. Okay. Fifth thing is holidays in New Zealand compared to the US. That is a good one. Let's talk about that. So here are some thoughts. What's so great about the holidays here is that they're not over exaggerated like they are in the States. You know how you have stuff at Target like 2 months before Halloween. Right? It's just like there's just constant even consumerism around the holidays, and you just won't see that here. People don't celebrate holidays like crazy here, like they do in the States. It's not like this crazy situation. Now they really, they celebrate all the Christian holidays. Like Christmas is very big. Easter is very big. In fact, you can't be open on Easter Sunday or Good Friday, or you'll get fined. Like they really want you to stay home and they want businesses to close, and so or you get fined. And so what's interesting about that is that all the American restaurants like Subway, McDonald's, Burger King, they all stay open because nobody else is open. So obviously it's good business, but they just pay the fine. So that's always interesting. It's just that's an example of showing the cultural difference and the cultural values. But Christmas on the beach is weird. It's weird having Christmas, because I'm from Wisconsin, and so, you're used to the snow and the darkness. So it doesn't get dark till 10, so it doesn't really make sense to have Christmas lights. So that's kind of a bummer, and it's not cold, and you're not staying in, so people are barbecuing for Christmas, people are on the beach for Christmas, and that's weird. Like, it's fun for like the first year or two, but like, it's kind of however you grew up for Christmas is how you really love it, right? And so that Christmas is probably, my kids would really like to go back and have a real Christmas with snow and that sort of thing. And we would probably this year if we could, but it isn't the year to go to America. So the other thing I would say is they don't have like Thanksgiving, which is probably my favorite holiday. And so we host our own Thanksgiving here. We have like 70 people and we get turkey and I have everybody bring in, I give them real American recipes and they love it. What's so cool about New Zealanders is they love to embrace trying something new. They love people that are different than them. Like they want to understand who you are and why you do the things you do and where you're from. And so they loved it. And so like even when we first came, they were like, let's have Thanksgiving and show us how to do that. And we always had Thanksgiving pretty every single year that we've been here, whether we hosted it or not, because people wanted to provide that or wanted to be a part of that, or, you know, they wanted to try pumpkin pie, which they've never had, and they don't really eat turkey here. So even it's really expensive to get a turkey here, but yeah, they haven't really had that. But yeah, so and other holidays, like what I really like is that the school year here is all year. And so you have 4 terms and then 2 weeks in between each term, which was really nice because then you have, it isn't just like the summertime and then Christmas time isn't the only time. Like that's how it kind of is in the States, is when you take holiday. But here it's like all spread out throughout the year, so you can take holiday with your family multiple times. So it's really great. Like the kids go to school for 8 to 10 weeks at a time, and then you get a break, and it's great. And then you can kind of travel all year round doing all different things depending on the weather all year round. So yeah, well, that's all the time that we have today for questions. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like the content, if you like what I'm talking about, learning about what it's like living in another country, please subscribe below. And I try to post every week, you know, if I can. But yeah, so let me know any questions that you have. I'd be happy to answer another question. We could do another Q&A session on more of your questions. Have a good day.